There's a feeling you get in Tokyo that's hard to describe until you've been there. It's not excitement exactly. It's not tension. It's something quieter. Like the whole city is holding itself together with a kind of precision you don't see anywhere else. I've spent time in a lot of financial centers: New York, London, Hong Kong, Singapore. They all have energy. They all move fast. But Tokyo is different. Tokyo moves with discipline. And that discipline, once you start noticing it, you see it everywhere. In the trains that arrive on time to the second, in the way people wait, in the silence on the subway, in the patience. Most people, when they think about financial power, they think about speed, quick decisions, fast money, aggressive moves. And there are places in the world that work that way. But Tokyo built something else. Tokyo built a system based on control, on long term thinking, on not making mistakes. And I think that's worth understanding. Because in a world that keeps speeding up, Tokyo chose a different path. And somehow, it still works. To understand Tokyo's financial system, you have to go back, not to ancient history, but to a specific moment: the years after World War II. Japan in 1945 was destroyed. I don't mean damaged, I mean destroyed. Cities flattened, economy collapsed. The country had to rebuild everything from nothing. And when you rebuild from nothing, the decisions you make in that moment shape everything that comes after. What Japan chose, what Tokyo chose, was stability, not growth at any cost. Stability first, trust first. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't lose what you've built. That might sound obvious, but it's not how most countries think. Most countries, especially developing economies, chase growth. They borrow, they speculate, they take big swings. Sometimes it works, often it doesn't. Japan did something different. The government worked closely with banks. Banks worked closely with corporations. Everyone had long term relationships. Everyone understood the rules. And the rules were simple: don't fail, don't collapse, don't create chaos. That's not a philosophy that creates billionaires overnight, but it's a philosophy that creates something else. It creates endurance. I think about this a lot when I'm in Tokyo. How the city feels like it was built to last. Not to impress, not to dominate, just to last. The Japanese financial system, even today, operates on principles that would seem strange in New York or London. Relationships matter more than transactions. A bank doesn't just lend money, it becomes a partner. Sometimes for decades, sometimes across generations. Corporations don't maximize quarterly profits at any cost. They think about employees, about suppliers, about reputation, about what happens in 10 years, not 10 months. This drives some Western investors crazy. They look at Japanese companies sitting on huge cash reserves and they don't understand: why aren't you spending that? Why aren't you taking risks? Why aren't you growing faster? And the answer is usually the same: because we don't need to, because we're fine, because we've seen what happens when you chase growth without thinking about what you might lose. There is a word in Japanese that I keep coming back to: gaman. It's usually translated as endurance or patience, but it's more than that. It's the idea of bearing difficulty without complaint, of holding steady when things are hard, of not panicking. That concept runs through everything in Tokyo, through the culture, through the work ethic, through the financial system. When the global financial crisis hit in 2008, I remember watching how different cities reacted. New York was chaos, London was fear, but Tokyo was quiet. Not because Japan wasn't affected, it was, but because panic isn't really an option there. You don't show panic. You don't act on panic. You wait. You assess. You respond carefully. That's not weakness. That's discipline. And discipline in finance is often more valuable than brilliance because brilliance can be wrong. Discipline just keeps going. I want to talk about how this shows up in everyday life because the financial system isn't separate from the culture. It comes from the culture. They're the same thing. In Tokyo, people save money. That sounds simple, but the rates are remarkable. Japanese households save more than almost any other developed country, not because they're scared, but because that's what you do. You prepare. You don't assume things will be fine. You make sure you can handle it if they're not. Spending is careful. Debt is avoided when possible. There's a social expectation around financial responsibility that you don't see in the same way in the United States or Europe. It's not about being rich. It's about being stable, about not becoming a burden, about handling your own problems. This extends to corporations too. Japanese companies are famously conservative with debt. They hold cash reserves that Western analysts often criticize as inefficient. But those reserves mean something. They mean the company can survive a crisis. They mean employees won't be laid off the moment the market turns. They mean stability. It's a different way of thinking about what a company is for. In the American model, a company exists to maximize shareholder value. In the Japanese model, a company exists to endure, to provide employment, to maintain relationships, to be part of a larger system. Neither model is perfect. Both have costs. But the Japanese model has produced something remarkable. Companies that have existed for hundreds of years, literally. Some of the oldest continuously operating businesses in the world are Japanese. And that's not an accident. That's discipline compounded over generations. There's a criticism of Japan's financial system that you hear a lot, that it's too slow, that it missed the tech boom, that it's falling behind. And some of that is true. Japan's economic growth over the past 30 years has been modest compared to China or even the United States. The bubble that burst in the early 1990s created what they call the lost decade. Some people say it was two lost decades, maybe three. But I think that framing misses something important. Japan didn't collapse. The system didn't break. There was no chaos. People didn't lose their homes by the millions. The social fabric held. Compare that to what happened in the United States in 2008, or what's happening now in countries with unstable currencies and collapsing banks. Speed and growth created those crises. Discipline and patience prevented Japan from experiencing the same kind of breakdown. That's worth something. Maybe it's worth more than we usually admit. Tokyo today is an interesting place to watch because the world is changing, and Tokyo has to decide how much to change with it. There's pressure to be more like Silicon Valley, to take more risks, to move faster, to embrace disruption. And some of that is happening. Younger entrepreneurs are building startups. Some traditional structures are loosening, but the core remains. The fundamental belief that stability is more valuable than speed, that trust takes decades to build and moments to destroy. That discipline isn't boring, it's protective. And here's what I've come to believe: the world needs places like Tokyo, Not because everyone should operate that way, but because the global financial system needs balance. It needs places that don't panic, that don't chase every trend, that hold steady when others are running in circles. When markets go crazy, capital flows to safety, and predictability is a form of safety. Discipline is a form of safety. Tokyo offers something that you can't manufacture quickly. It offers trust built over decades, systems that work, institutions that don't collapse. That's not exciting, but it's valuable. And in a crisis, it might be the most valuable thing there is. I want to come back to something I said earlier about discipline being a choice, because it is a choice. Every day, Tokyo chooses discipline over speed, patience over aggression, long term over short term. And that choice has costs. It means slower growth, it means missed opportunities, it means watching other countries race ahead and wondering if you should follow. But it also has benefits. It means sleeping at night. It means not worrying that the whole system will collapse if one thing goes wrong. It means building something that your grandchildren might still be part of. I don't know which model is right. Maybe neither is right. Maybe they're both just different responses to the same fundamental uncertainty about the future. But I know which model I understand better after spending time in Tokyo. And I know which one seems more sustainable over the very long term. There's a way that people walk in Tokyo. It's hard to describe, but you notice it if you pay attention. There's no rushing. Even in the busiest stations, with millions of people moving through every day, there's an order to it. People know where to stand, where to walk, how to move through the crowd without colliding. It's a small thing, but it's a metaphor for everything else. The system works because everyone agrees to follow the rules, not because they're forced to, but because they understand that the rules exist for a reason. That individual restraint creates collective order. That discipline at the small scale creates stability at the large scale. That's what Tokyo built. Not just a financial system, a philosophy, a way of thinking about time and risk and responsibility that runs through everything. And I think that's rare. In a world that celebrates disruption and speed and moving fast and breaking things, Tokyo stands there and says, no, we're going to move carefully. We're going to build things that last. We're going to be here long after the current excitement fades. There's something almost defiant about it, a quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove itself, that doesn't need to win every quarter, that just needs to still be standing when the dust settles. I think about what that means for the future. As the world gets more uncertain, as financial systems get more complex and interconnected, as crises seem to come faster and hit harder, maybe speed isn't the advantage everyone thinks it is. Maybe the advantage is endurance, the ability to absorb shocks, to wait things out, to still be there when the panic passes. Tokyo seems to understand that. Maybe it always has. It's evening now, and I'm watching the city from somewhere high. The lights coming on, the trains still running, the system still functioning, like it did yesterday, like it will tomorrow. Nothing dramatic is happening. Nobody's making a fortune tonight. Nobody's losing one either. Just the quiet machinery of a city that decided a long time ago that the goal isn't to win big. The goal is to not lose, to keep going, to remain. There's a kind of wisdom in that, the kind you don't notice until you've seen enough cities rise and fall, enough systems break, enough people chase speed and end up with nothing. Tokyo just keeps going, disciplined, patient, still here. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's always been the point.